What's going on, everyone? It's Bales, and welcome back to another AFL Fantasy head-to-head video where we put two players up against one another to see who we pick between the two. This is episode 8. If you haven't checked out the other 7 episodes, all of the you just head to my YouTube channel and check out all of them. But also, they're available as pods now, which I haven't actually mentioned on any of the videos. But yeah, so you can get them wherever you get your podcast. Normally about 24 hours after the YouTube video is out. But joining me on episode 8 to talk through a couple of premium midfielders that could be a bit underpriced heading in 2024 is the man with the golden tonsils, one half of the Ball Boys. It is Luke from the Ball Boys. Mate, how are you?
Always good, Bales. Always good, mate. I feel a little strange sitting in the middle of the desk looking down the barrel there. But normally used to have my partner in crime here, but I'll see if I can hold down the fort today. I've actually, buddy, he normally, just sitting down behind me here, he normally has his bloody Lego Star Wars toy there, and I've replaced it with the Richmond dolls. I don't know if you can see, but I think better than the Lego Star Wars is his nerd Lego. So
yeah,
I've ditched that. It's all Richmond. I got Richmond here. I got Richmond there. I got Richmond up there. I'm ready to rock. Yeah,
mate, let's get stuck in. We had Bitch on obviously a couple of days talking through LDU and Walsh, as I said. Make sure you check out that episode as well. But we'll be talking about two premium midfielders that sort of lit up 2021 and sort of have had mixed sort of years the last couple of years, not quite reaching the heights they did in 2021. It is Jack Steele and Touk Miller. So both a little bit more underpriced than what they have in previous years, both being under 900K. I'll be taking Touk Miller, the cheaper guy out of the two, and Luke will be taking the more expensive Jack Steele, and he'll be kicking us off with the two players. So, Luke, mate, why should people be selecting Jack Steele in their side in 2024?
Well, Bales, I sort of want to start by kind of painting a little bit of a picture. So take you back to 2020, COVID year, and Steele averages 90, which I think is an equivalent 110, somewhere around that mark. So 2020, good year. Then he entered both pop in 2021, go 120, followed by 2022, where they dip back down and Steele goes about 110. What I think people might be sort of neglecting to think about is they're looking at that pop season in 2021, 120. He goes down to 110 in 2022, and then he finishes just below 100 in 2023. And that looks like a regression trend there, doesn't it? But the thing I kind of ask myself is, well, going from 2021, where he's averaged that 120, very few guys are going to average 120 over multiple years. So the natural sort of dip in 2022 of 110 is not actually something that I would be particularly concerned about. And then when he drops down in 2023, we know that there's a story behind that. There's the niggling injuries. There's these things that are hampering him throughout the year. He ends up having to get ankle surgery at the end of the year. So I think sometimes when we look at these undervalued premiums, we kind of got to paint a bit of a story in our head and work out, well, what was the reason behind maybe the regression in scoring, and do we think that we can get back to that ceiling? This guy's 28 years old. So he's effectively gone 3 seasons in a row where he's gone 110 plus. He's had an injury-riddled season where he's dropped down below 100. I struggle to see a world where we don't see Jack Steele go back to those 110 averages, especially at his age. He's had that ankle cleaned up over the off season. I've got this good feeling that I think we're going to see him back to the Jack Steele of old in 2024. What are your initial thoughts there on Steele?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think, as you say, injuries riddled last year, and people could say, "Oh, he's injury prone, this, that, and the other." I think that a few of people in the maybe not just fantasy sales, but just in AFL fantasy sales in general, do throw this injury sort of like that they're injury prone, like just around sort of a little bit willy nilly. Like I think that you've got certain players that are injury prone, like your Elliot Yo's. Even Zach Williams a little bit as well, which you never know. Might be talking about him in a future episode. But some of these guys have had hamstrings, calves, just continue on. But Steele's had they've been sort of like a shoulder injury. I can't remember exactly what the shoulder injury was at the beginning of last year. And then he did a weird ankle. Like he went to kick, I can't even remember how it happened. It was against the Crows. It was like he tried kicking it, and his leg got caught under or something. It's just a sort of innocuous incident. So I don't see that as a big deal. And as you say, like went 120, but then he went 110. Like people think, oh, he regressed a bit. But that 120 was such a good year that he was never really going to back up a 120 like back to back, like the best of the best, like your Tom Mitchells, your Dane Swans, your Tom Rockcliffs, and Brodie Grundys are the only sort of players that have been able to do that season on season. Even like again, got to say memory every pod. Roy Laird dropped from 120 down to a 109. Like he dropped a bit because of how good that year the before was. It's very rare you see him back up, but the fact he's priced under 100, we've seen a few players last year like your Tom Greens, your Caleb Sarongs, even a Bont. Bont's probably a good example, actually. Priced under 100 last year. I think he was pretty much just on 100. Was able to go 117. So I think Jack Steele can fall a little bit into that sort of that fray this year and go that 110 mark. So again, he had some injury affected scores in there as well. Played forward in games. So do you see him bouncing back to that 110 mark this year?
Yeah, I think it'd be a little ambitious to project 120s, but I'd like to think that he can get back to 110. Like I said, he's got two seasons of the 110 with the massive anomaly, the 120 in the middle of it. The thing, like you mentioned it, that 120 season is massive. His last 12 games in that year, he went over 130 8 times. So 2 of every 3 games, he's given you a 130. Like that for me is an anomaly more so than what I consider that 21 to 22 a regression. So in my mind, I'm considering that last year was his really only kind of down season. And the fact that it can be explained away through those injuries, I think that actually kind of makes it a little bit more palatable if you're going to go pick him this year. There's sort of a couple of other narratives. You mentioned the injury. So obviously that shoulder was mentioned, and a few times I heard it mentioned, is the shoulder impacting his tackling? Is it impacting his ability to, hunt the footy and get in the contest? Well, between 2022, 2023, he actually averaged the same amount of tackles in games, which is just like around that 7 mark. And then in that massive season, 2021, he had 8.5 tackles or something like that. So I just don't know whether I can buy into the, is the shoulder sore? Is that preventing him from getting in at the contest? Because the bloke's hard as nails. Like no one can dispute that. And the fact that he scores he's sort of multifaceted in his scoring as well, contributes to the fact that I just can't see this guy being a guy that goes under 100, very frequently. And I just don't think it's going to be in 2024 either. Another stat that I actually read in one of the Deca DT articles, I think it might have been DC's article on Steele the other day. DC, was that his time on ground was just slightly lower this year, just gone than it had been. So I think it was around the 78, 79 mark, and in the previous 3 years before that had been mid-80s. And I know it doesn't seem like a massive shift, but that's a big enough shift for that extra, little 10 points. That's all we're asking, is to go back to that 110 average. And what I noticed statistically in terms of where he dropped off last year, it wasn't in the tackles, it wasn't in the marks, it was more so just in the disposals there. He averaged 2 less kicks and 1.5, 2 less handballs, which, there it is. There's the 2 points. And I just I don't see that being, something that he can't, turn around. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. The time, as you said, the time on ground. Obviously, Steele has actually had games where he's gone high 80s and even low 90s, like just when he's been required to play in a closer game. So when I see these games where he's under 80%, I'm like, that's not Jack Steele. Like there are players in the comp that do play a little bit less. We know that, but Jack Steele is normally around like your LDUs, even your Clayton Olivers, Lockie Neals, where they do play mid to high 80s. In terms of time on ground, I think that the injuries again are sort of hampering through especially the back half of the year as well. The ankle injury that he suffered against the Crows, I think, was a big factor in why he didn't play as much game time. Obviously, he had the surgery in off season. I'm assuming it's the same ankle, so I'm expecting him to go back. And I think that there's been talk about that St Kilda's game style was very much is one of the least amount of stoppages. I think they said in the AFL. I think Jaden might have been the one that said that. But I expect St Kilda to go to a little bit more. Not completely change the game style. I think there will be more stoppages in the game this year, which is going to be good for those St Kilda mids and Ron Marshall, and in particular, obviously, Jack Steele, where he does get those tackles. So I think that I just see that little bump going back to him. So would you agree with that as well?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they were second last in ruck contests, stoppages last year, and he still managed to average 100 with all those injury concerns, that's almost warms the heart. Like that's almost to the point where you're thinking like, okay, well, if they're second last in stoppages, they can only go up from there. He's had 3 different bloody joints injured throughout the year. So there's only up from there, and he still managed to average 100. So I see that as positive. And you hear a lot of good people in the community talking about when you're looking at the start of the year and you're looking for those underpriced premiums, you have to be able to sell yourself a story. There's no point in looking at a guy that you think's underpriced and then you go, oh, well, I think he's underpriced just because I've got a hunch. You want to be able to point to something that kind of suggests that maybe there's a little uptick. And I think the fact that he had that injury affected year last year, he's had it sorted. I think he got surgery just before the Brownlow, and then was back at training just post-Christmas. I read an article or something like that. So he's effectively, for a guy that's been in the system, quite a few years, he's going to have effectively a full preseason as well. I hope, I think maybe it's optimistic, but I hope he comes out fit and firing for 2024.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same one. I think that he will. Moving on to another guy that had a few injuries to deal with in this past season gone, which this guy has normally been like the Iron Man. He's never really missed any games. But we're talking about Touk Miller from the Gold Coast. So yeah, as I say, just a bit of a difficult year last year. If people recall, if people following through my unfortunate season last year, was that I owned Touk Miller for his one game where he scored 48 against North Melbourne. And for some reason, he was tagging LDU in that game, which he was already on track for a pretty poor score. But then it was just a weird injury. Like his knee just completely locked up. And because of that, he missed, I'm just trying to get up here. So he missed 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 weeks, including his bye. So 10 weeks in total from round 6 to round 17. So came back round 17 against Port Adelaide, 97. Then he got a 108 against St Kilda, 81 against GWS, 97 against Brisbane. And missed a week there. Can't quite recall why he missed.
I think that was the squirrel grip, wasn't it, Bales? When he got was it Zorko that he got in the squirrel grip?
Yes, yeah. Okay, that's why. Memory. Yeah, so the suspension, because it was Brisbane was the week before. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, missed a week there. Came back 79, finished off at 118 or 100, but none of those scores really look promising. So even at the start of the year, so he went 4 of the first 5 games were hundreds, 108, 102, 88, 120, 104. So not bad, but again, low hundreds. So not really putting up those big scores. But if you turn our attention back to his 2021 season, where he averaged 122.1, obviously him and Jack Steele were the big Donnies in that season. Like some of these scores here, I'm not going to read off every single score, but you've got scores of 130, 140, 142, 130, 119, 160, 130, 122, 112, 141, 155, 110, 127, 135, 140, 133. And that's all in one season. And those last 4 scores, 4 of those came in the last 5 weeks as well. And post round 11, only one score below 110, which was an 82 against Essendon, which I remember that year was the week I brought him in. So that's typical. But he was just an absolute monster. So it just shows that last year could be the story that it was just an injured year, but also moving to the Gold Coast midfield, where you look at the guys coming sort of through now. You got Noah Anderson, Matt Rao, Sam Flens came in last year. Bailey Humphrey got some time in there as well. David Swallow was now. I don't expect that to be as much this year. But Luke, this will be where I'll throw to you, mate. What do you see Touk doing in 2024? So I think we can all say that last year was a bit of just sort of a write-off for him just with these injuries. I don't expect that to be a reoccurrence moving forward. It's more about this midfield mix for Gold Coast. How do you see that playing out? And do you see Touk Miller returning to his days of averaging 110 or more?
Yeah, it was interesting you mentioned the other Gold Coast mids there as well. Last year when he did come back from that injury, he never kind of reached those CBA percentage heights that he had before getting injured in the first 6 rounds. I think, to an extent, Gold Coast had kind of set up a large portion of the season with their other midfielders, and they kind of maybe stuck through with those guys even when Touk came back. The two biggest things when it comes to Touk is that you've got an early bye that you're going to have to navigate, and then new coach, I think, is the biggest unknown. So for me, I'm not going to come out and declare that I know what's going to happen, but if you're looking at him as a starting pick, as a premium, you're going to miss a week of him in the first 6. Is it week 5 that Gold Coast have the bye, Bales?
Week 3.
Week 3.
Earlier.
And then the new coach Hardwick. So do we buy into the Richmond narrative that, if Hardwick brings that same system that he had at Richmond, that the midfielders are going to struggle to have that ceiling potentially? What do you reckon?
It's a good point. Yeah, because I was actually just about to raise that as well, about the fact that the early buy and the new coach is two other sort of flags that you got to throw in with the fact that just that early buys is a bit of a stickler for me, especially when there's other guys around that price like Jack Steele, who we're comparing him to, who doesn't have an early buy, and they're pretty similarly priced. And new coach coming in, I think it's dependent on player and sort of teams. I think when he was at Richmond, there wasn't a lot of those players where you could look at him and go, he's a 100 averaging player, he's 110, he's a whatever. So like, Jaden Shaw obviously was good in patches. Obviously, Bash Hawley had great years, and obviously the guy that's in the picture behind you, Dusty Martin, obviously had some big years as well. But I think Touk's a different player where I think he can go well regardless of coach. I think that the bigger concern is the fact that the midfield mix is that I think Noah Anderson has overtaken him in that midfield. I think Matt Rao may have even overtaken him as well. So that's a concern for me, where I don't know if he's going to get back to that. He's definitely not I don't think going to get back to that 120, because he was the main guy in there, and that was when Rao was injured / coming back from injury and sort of working his way sort of from being such a young player, and Anderson was still learning the tricks of the trade in there as well. So how do you, is that the bigger concern for you? Is it the fact that midfield mix, or is it new coach? Is that and you'd like to, and the early buy, is that more of a concern for you?
I think the new coach and early buy is a concern from the perspective of like having him as a starting pick, because you're going to get a round 0 look, you're going to get a preseason look in terms of that new coach, but then like I said, you're going to get that early buy. For me, he reeks of a guy that we can potentially get on after his buy, or even look to be one of those first upgrades if he's going really well, just because by that stage in the year, we're going to have had a decent look at what Hardwick wants to do at the Gold Coast, and where Touk sort of fits into that as well. The other thing that will be important to look at is game style as well. We know that Touk does get his points in a variety of ways, but if they're slingshotting the ball, if they're moving it really quickly and bypassing some of those short +6 options that he might normally get his hands on, then that could be to the detriment of his scoring as well. So I think when it comes down to comparing the two guys, Steele and Touk, it's probably just the fact that Touk has just a few more questions for me, whereas the questions that Steele has, I kind of think I might know the answers to when it comes to those injuries. And for Steele as well, it's his second year under Ross the Boss. So, perhaps there was a feeling out period to a point last year, and perhaps he'll be locked into, more of a confident role this year coming as well.
Yeah, that's a pretty good segue leading into sort of going back to Steele, because now we're going to pick who we're going to be going on the turn. I think it's clear who we're going, and I think it has got a bit to do with that buy. But Luke, who are you picking out of Steele and Touk for 2024?
Yeah, I'm still with Steele. So I think that, like you said, it kind of picked itself a little bit with the early round buys. But I think that makes Touk a really interesting prospect as a guy that we look to, after his buy and onwards. Especially once we see what's happening with that game style as well.
Yeah, I'm the same as well. I'm Jack Steele out of 2. I think that opening buy is the one for me that probably splits it. I think when you've got two guys that you're probably looking between, I think that the early buys is something that you sort of sway away from and you go to the other guy. That's me and Mitch had a bit of that discussion as well with LDU and Sam Walsh. Sam Walsh got the early buy, LDU doesn't. You probably lean a little bit more to LDU in that scenario. So Jack Steele I'm into. But always one last question before we wrap up as well. If Touk Miller goes 110 plus, maybe even a 120 plus in that opening round, what's that going to do? Is that going to maybe change things? Do you maybe and more so if he gets a good score and has a good role? Because if he's playing half forward flank and pushing up into the midfield and gets a 120, I think we just go, that's just a good game. But if he plays midfield like pretty much full time and has a good score, is that going to maybe not sway from picking Jack Steele, but maybe does that bring Touk Miller into your team as well?
Yeah, it's definitely something Mitch and I have talked about that round 0 kind of like the line. And I think you make a great point that it's not all about it's not all about what they score, but it's about the eye test as well. What role are they playing? I think, yeah, I don't even know if there's a scenario where I pick Touk, even if he went, massive.
150.
Yeah. Oh, fuck. 150 makes you look, doesn't it? But the thing is that there are a few guys in this price range that I do quite like. So underpriced guys, Butters, LDU, Steele. So I think he'd have to
giving
do
all your
something.
secrets away, mate.
Open book, mate. Open book. You don't want my secrets, trust me. But yeah, there's just so many guys around that sort of price range. And I mean, we've seen it before in sort of preseason games, haven't we? With like a guy like Short, I think went 170 one year and just everyone went on and it ended up being, more disappointing than that. So
then you got Goulden last year.
You got, well, I mean, Goulden we were keen on.
Good.
Goulden was, yeah, God, he was good. And I mean, he was good. He was good the week before too, because was it the 2 practice games they played? I remember watching him the week before. He didn't score as well, but the role was really good. And then when he came out and did that 170, it was just it was confirmation for everyone, wasn't it? But yeah, Man of Steel for me, and I don't know if Touk could change my mind. So
yeah, we'll have to see. That's what makes opening rounds so interesting this year, regardless if we agree with it or not. The card's been dealt. Yeah. We got to go through with it. But that is where the head-to-head battle is going to finish up there. Let us know in the comments below who you would go out of Jack Steele and Touk Miller. I haven't had too many comments on the videos just yet. So, but then again, this is recorded post a few videos, so maybe we do. But if you haven't already, make sure you get in the comments below. Let us know what your thoughts are on Jack Steele and Touk Miller heading in 2024. If you did enjoy the video, do make sure you leave a like as well and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, as we head towards 2,000 subscribers, which I'll obviously see about with Luke in a sec, but that is what they're on as well. So make sure you get involved as we head towards that milestone as well. But Luke, mate, thanks for jumping on with me. Now I've completed the Ball Boys set for the year, which is fantastic. Nice. Mate, where can the people find you on the socials, and how can people get around Ball Boys AFL Fantasy around YouTube and the podcasts?
Yeah, mate, it's for me, it's Luke Roger 17 on Twitter, and then for Mitch, it's at Ball Boys Fantasy. So if you haven't already, get over there and check us out there. And then obviously on YouTube, if you just type in Ball Boys AFL Fantasy, hopefully you should find us. And like you said, mate, we're hoping to keep that subscriber count ticking up. And the best thing about doing this is just like the engagement from the community, isn't it? So love it when people are commenting on the videos, like you said, and commenting on Twitter and kind of adding to the discussion, because Mitch and I always say it, but at the end of the day, we all just jump on here and talk shit like you would with your mates at the bar or wherever. And, that's what it's all about, just getting people involved and adding more information to the community. So always good fun. Thanks so much for having me on, mate. Appreciate it.
Beautiful, mate. Now, thanks for you for coming on, mate. Always glad to get you on the channel as well. Pleasure. Also, don't forget, I haven't mentioned in these other videos before this, but these are available as podcasts as well. So wherever you're listening to this, obviously we're talking on the YouTube video, but if you are listening to it as a podcast, please give us a 5-star rating would be preferable. But yeah, that and a review would be very much appreciated as well. That does it does help sort of put the content more out there for maybe people that haven't seen it yet, that may want to get involved with AFL Fantasy Fanatics in 2024. So all support you guys' show is always very much appreciated. And I'm at BailsDT on Twitter and Instagram, or X, whatever it's called. I'm still going to call it Twitter.
Yeah, so man. Old habits die hard, eh?
Yeah, exactly right. So next episode will be with another special guest, and we're talking about 2 mid-priced midfield options that could be set to break out, and maybe one breaking out after sort of plenty of times to talk about him in the preseason over the last probably however many years. So that'll be a very interesting discussion with another special guest. But until that episode, we'll catch you guys then. We're out. Cheers.